So thank you for coming here. I didn't expect this early hour, so many of you. So yeah, today I'm going to talk a little bit about the process we had behind the cinematic, the Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, which we did like a few months ago for the release of this awesome looking game. My name is Maciej Jackiewicz, and I work with Platige as an art director, which means like a bunch of different stuff. I try to like help artists and the whole process. And I was like quite surprised that the Foundry asked us to do this presentation, and it's quite special. I've spent a lot of time working with Nuke all the weekends, nights, and such. So many moments of beautiful work with Nuke. But I was also like, at first I was excited, but then I was like, what the hell am I going to show you here? Because first of all, the cinematic is quite unusual. It's very short. It's just 30 seconds. So there is not that much work done. Also, I have this old school approach to when I work on things. Like I try to, I'm being this art director, which means working with the team, but I also try to put my hands into as much as I can. Just like some years ago, we all wanted to just make films and animations, not just be stuck into this compartment of the pipeline step, like compositing. So Kingdom Come Deliverance is this game by Warhorse Studio. They're Czech-based. Also, the game is based on Czech Bohemian medieval times. So it looks really awesome. Let's just see the trailer. It's 30 seconds, so pay attention, please. Yeah, thank you. So just to start with this, what was the idea behind this? This was directed by Kuba Jabłoński, our in-house director. So I'm just guessing because it's like things we've never. But I guess the ideas behind this was like it was supposed to be really short, which is quite unusual for cinematics because they sometimes tend to be those big epic ones, serious stories. This one was like I think a cherry on the top of the game development because the Warhorse, they already did a lot of cool in-house trailers. I'm also guessing that it wasn't supposed to be that serious. Like usually, again, the cinematics they have this serious tone. This was supposed to be rather funny, and I must say this also translated to the process of the creation. It was really one of the most relaxed projects in a way I've worked on, especially on the client side. So that was really fun. And obviously this we have this maybe a bit unusual camera point of view, which is the Snorri cam. Stylization, let's call it this way. I read one of the comments on YouTube, I sometimes read, and someone asked, did they have selfie sticks in 15th century? So I don't know about that, but that was not the point. It wasn't supposed to be a selfie stick. It was supposed to be, this Snorri cam type of camera, which is usually this quite big rig around the actor, and it has some quite long story in the movie industry. We actually had some sort of rigs, Snorri cam rigs on the motion capture. I do have a making of. I will show you later, but it wasn't really used as a motion capture source. It was more like a reference for the edit. It was quite, heavy and not really comfortable for the recording. But yeah, we played with that. But let's jump to some, I call it visual development, which for me is, that depends. Whenever I'm, allowed to step in, that can happen even on a treatment stage, but usually it's a bit later. So for this one, I think it started with this kind of images, which I would call like location scouting, because we got some levels, some assets from the game, like the backgrounds, and it wasn't really like said and obvious what we have to use. So I was just like looking around the stuff we got. We got like huge levels of the meshes, and just trying to figure out what kind of backgrounds we might want to have. Maybe try to play with those fisheye lenses, trying to see the relation between the character and the background, stuff like that. And obviously, it isn't really representing the final images. It's in my favorite color palette, which is gray. Yeah, but I do like this approach. I like this freedom of being in 3D, playing with that, even if these are just like some kind of a simple sketches, right? So that's how it started. Something that was quite important in this project was the transitions between the shots, and obviously that was something that was planned. I think even in the storyboard, Kuba had this really precise idea what kind of a motion and the acting you will have on the transition to have those match cuts. And it wasn't that obvious in the animation, because you can assume that it will work, some sort of a movement, but then in the edit it turns out like, well, not really. So that was a huge pain. But mostly for the animation and edit department, I think. So we had like, this kind of a similar poses that are supposed to connect the shots. This was also rehearsed on the motion capture. I think this is one of my favorites. Like we have this, relation of two shots. One is this love scene, let's call it that way, and the other like a battle, violence scene, and they connect in this way. So this is quite romantic, I think. Yeah. And from the visual point of view, it was quite simple and obvious, because we, of course, wanted to have those smooth transitions, but at the same time, it was really crucial to show that we are in different place, different times. So the easiest way was to just to have the opposite lighting scheme for the scene. So we jumped from the candlelight to some cool outside lighting. Then we have the bright light and such and such. So it's just like changes from shot and scene. And it was also like the first idea that had to be implemented. But the actual development, it can mean different stuff, of course, because I have like this comparison. This is the final shot, and this is how we start in the previous. So, at this point, you think, okay, is this going to work? And it doesn't. For quite a long time, it doesn't really work. So it takes a lot of time of work of various departments. What do I have here? It's like the first previews, just without even the proper character. One day you wake up and on ShotGrid you see something like this. There's this magic transition happening. Then here is the final, let's say, final model in the previews. It doesn't really look promising. But even at this stage, I do insist and try to, put it into the lighting just to see what we have and how is it working, so we can actually start not to postpone this phase until later. And yeah, so that at the same time, there's a lot of changes in animation. This was really difficult to actually make a motion capture of it, because even if it worked like on the set, it wasn't really obvious that it will work in the camera. So there were like dozens of versions of her posture and smiling and such. So a lot of things have been happening. But let's jump to the Nuke for a while. I call it relighting, and it's not really relighting. It's like a really obvious concept of having all the lights separated as early as possible, just to have the light selections separate. I'm saying it's obvious because I think everyone uses that. So I just find it really useful in cinematics we make, because I really like to have, when I start lighting, I just have all those lights separated. So I can play with Nuke easily, just kill some lights, experiment really fast. So that's what I always do, and I really try to avoid like rebuilding beauty passes from the components, because if that doesn't work, so I prefer to have this freedom of the just tossing the light groups. And in those shots, it seemed even more important, because we have this action when the characters, they are like rotating 360 degrees in this candle room lighting. So even if you have a nice lighting in one phase, just like half a second later, you have like completely something different, right? So, and it would be nice from the I would say film perspective to have this dynamic change from dark to light, but those shots are so short, so we had to keep the character like recognizable from the very start to the end of the shot. So what I was doing here is like using my really complex compositing node, which is like just a few light groups, stuck on top of each other. But I'm actually animating some of the lights, killing them over the shot. So it's like thinking about this kind of a setup, like it's not a static thing. You can play with that. You can remove some lights you don't want, and the end result is subtly different from the beauty pass. It's just this like average lighting, but yeah, it was really useful here. And the same approach was used for all the scenes in so-called bathhouse. This is the beauty, which it's kind of okay, but it's maybe too even. And those were like passes that are, building this. And the final is I'm like trying to balance those out. When I watch this now, I do see this strange lighting changes, like some light is appearing, the other is disappearing, but it's a trade-off. This one is also like, this is Fiona's case. I called it, actually the character is named Catherine in the game. So we had to recreate this one character in the cinematic for the one shot, and we usually just take the asset from the game, but we have to put it in the pipeline and such. So during the process, this sometimes doesn't end up well. There are like a bunch of things happening, probably, the shaders, the model, the animation, maybe displacement, I don't know. It took a while to change that because, well, we ended up with something like this. She's more like her, but the lighting wasn't favorable. She's like leaning forward, so yeah, but we had to like fix it quickly. And here is just, another like very prehistoric tool that he probably also used, like just using those gizmos for relighting with the normal maps, which isn't the best way, but sometimes I do use it just maybe not for relight, but actually creating some masks to add some shadowing, to maybe just shape the lighting a little bit. In this example, it's really minor, as I'm, just grading a little bit the beauty, so just to have a bit different lighting. As I say, this is just tiny little bit, but I do keep it in mind sometimes, like having those simple techniques. Or here, we usually try to have those special lights to create the life in eyes, just this sparkling thing. But sometimes if I miss that for some reason, you can also use this one, filtrate it, and then you have those two dots in the eyes, and which are not even visible here, but yeah. Let's jump to some of the environments. For 30 seconds, we have quite a lot of backgrounds. And we usually at Platige, I think we do try it a brute force way, just have everything, modeled, rendered, heavy stuff. But here we had some constraints, like we couldn't really do that. So I started wondering how much of the environments we actually need, because we have this stylization for the Snorri cam, and we have this huge distortions. So we don't see that much of the background. We are focused on character, and even if we have 3D representation, we usually end up with this kind of a fishbowl effect, like we are in the sphere. So at some point I was thinking, like, with this environment, what the hell, let's just project it on a sphere, okay? Let's make the life easy for ourselves. So I did the tests, just rendered out some simple geo we had with the lights. And on a sphere, it looks like this. And to be honest, it's almost identical to the 3D image that you will get from the same camera movement. It's more, almost you don't recognize it. So for this environment, I think we needed a bit more 3D, because we have the scene where we are close to the pillar, so more camera movement was involved. We actually ended up with something much detailed in 3D. But this thinking I was trying to have in most of the environments. So just a few examples of that. The battlefield was one of them. So we actually rotate almost 360 degrees around this environment, but we stay in one place. We stay just close to the character with the Snorri cam around him. So again, the idea was let's just project that. This was the first approach, like simple environment rendered as a spherical projection. Then a really not that great matte paint. As you can see, we have some patches that are even duplicated, but the trees are replaced and such. And this is actually projected onto the sphere. I used the setup here, which could be simpler, I think, but I liked this one, where I actually changed this image. You can, using the spherical transform, you can break up and change the projection from lat long. Here you change that to rectilinear, and by just adjusting the angle, you just split the sphere into like 6 projections, right? So each one is facing the different direction. So then when you have like 6 cameras, each one is like 90 degrees rotated. So you can create this kind of a setup, and eventually you project this image onto whatever you want. Like here, it's just a cube, and then eventually I had this ground for which was actually a geo, where we have some background characters scattered, and then there is the sphere around, and we end up with something like this. And again, we feel this spherical image, but that's in a way something that we wanted. We wanted to have this fisheye look, so that turned out to work okay. We also had some real terrain modeled, and as a backup, just to have more integration with the characters. This is another, like, nothing special, but sometimes I try to force tools to work as a multi-tools. I just like to have the everything in one place. So for this, I just use it as trying to find the places for the background characters. So instead, and I wanted to have this relation with the background, with the matte paint. So I would put them in Nuke at first, and then export it as a reference. So it's just other thinking like the opposite way, what you usually do. So as you can see, there are some of those guys. We ended up with actually having less of them. Yeah, this is the final image. We just have few characters. Usually on the sides. We didn't want them to be too obvious and not to take too much space. The same thinking I will repeat probably a bit. It's I use for the tournament. Again, we didn't even need that. We didn't even need this 360 freedom of the camera, because we turned out to have those shots much narrower. But it turned out to be easier, so we just put some geo into the Nuke. Actually, 2 layers were enough, so this was split between the back castle and which was rendered. We did have some simple shaders and textures in 3D. With the not so great matte paint I did, and the same for the tents and the ground, and this was all put like this kind of a projection again. So as you would see, it works okay-ish. It's breaking up in many places. It's not finished, but for this, it turned out to be enough. And we ended up with this kind of image. We put some those fences, they need to be 3D because we have a bit of the movement, so that would be more difficult. We also put some crowds and the banners, and then I always try to watch those shots through the depth of field, like a filter, let's say, because if it worked with this, it's okay. I don't need perfect projection. I don't need perfect matte paint, and I don't need the center when I put this guy. So yeah, if it worked, it worked. So the same setup was for the second shot, so it was quite universal. We could have much more movement with the camera, but we didn't need that. But talking about, this is just like I think a usual thing about comping and artists, when artists spend weeks, months doing some 3D, and that goes to comp, and they finally don't see even what they did. So we try to avoid that. I know the pain. I know how it feels. So even if all I said about this was like trying to be smart and maybe minimize stuff, we still ended up with some things that were wasted in a way. So I call it a ghost party, because in the scene with the bath house, so-called, we do have like a bunch of a party going on in the back, but you don't even see that. So we put some characters. There is some romance scene. There are 2 guys in the bathtub. I'm not showing them, but we end up with something like this. We put them like, okay, let's just put them here. We add some additional motion blur, and this is what you get. So, but yeah, it was worth it, right? So, unfortunately, we use the same characters as the spectators in the tournament scene, so they're not that wasted. Here, another example, like. We had this palisade with the Bombarda cannon and some like decent 3D done for it. But we actually had very little comments from the client on this one, which was surprising. But we did have a one for that, like, okay, but this cannot work on a palisade. This is not like a defense cannon. It's supposed to be, you use it to attack and to destroy the settlement. So it needs to be on something else. So I like moved back in time to this image when we tried to put it on some sort of rock, like in different scenario. But we kind of wanted to marry with the old environment. But this came into the hands of quite ambitious 3D artists. So he made this nice, mossy terrain, and it looks cool. I mean, okay. But I felt like, oh, we don't need that. But eventually what happened was like, again, we put it in the light. We put the effects we wanted here. We put the guy, and it's gone. Like, this. So it happens. But we try to avoid that. But it's nice. The same. This is something I did like after the project, because for the battle scene we did have like quite a lot of variations of the mocap fighting in the background. We made like maybe 4 or 3 variations of the soldiers, but we don't see them that much. But then I played with it, like what we could have. So it turns out we could actually build a pretty epic battle scene, but not this time. Again, my favorite colors, grayish. I also have a motion capture making of, which I think got more views than the actual trailer. So, but it's really fun. Let's see it. Yeah. Yeah, it looks fun. I was on the session. It wasn't that fun, really. So it's just and I will maybe I shouldn't say that, but we didn't have the horse on the mocap for this project. It's for a different one, but yeah. So sometimes I do think about switching from this look dev to more action-oriented stuff, but we'll see. Okay, I think it's all. I ended quicker than I thought, so thank you.